Because you come back and you're messed up, like what happened to me, you will be living a world of hurt. Now, in regards to programs, our RCMP Veterans Association has been asking for the VIP program, which the military have had for years. That program has been around since 1981. But yet, our veterans, our disabled RCMP veterans, have been asking for this program so they can live with dignity in their homes and communities, like our brothers in the armed forces. Recently, Commissioner Elliott took a proposal to the Prime Minister in regards to the VIP program for the RCMP. It was flatly denied. When the first casualty comes back from Afghanistan, who will be an RCMP officer, possibly with no legs and an OSI like post-traumatic stress disorder, there will be no VIP program for that individual to rely on. That is an absolute crime. They send our people, they ask, the federal government tasks the RCMP for volunteers to go to Afghanistan. Well, we don't have enough officers to send, so they extend the invitation to the provincial, regional, and municipal officers all over this country. And sadly to say, there are several cases where officers from these other departments have been left high and dry. And I'll speak of one of them. His name is Mel Birmingham, a friend of mine. He's with the Cape Breton Regional Police. The Cape Breton Regional Police, by the way, have sent more officers on missions per capita with the RCMP than any other force in the country. Well, Mel was in a hellhole called Mitrovica. And I was actually in Kosovo at the same time he was. He'd been held at gunpoint twice, had numerous explosive devices thrown at his house because he was living in an Albanian house in a Serbian neighborhood. He did his job and he stood the line. But he came back messed up like I did, and he paid the price. He bled for this country in Mitrovica. And what happened to Mel? Well, Workmen's Compensation in Cape Breton said, well, you didn't get injured in Cape Breton, so we can't help you. Well, Mel wrote a letter to Veterans Affairs. And what happened? Well, he didn't pay into the Superannuation Act. Sorry, we can't help you. So we have a righteous veteran, a disabled one, living under $1,000 a month with no support from anybody.
Shame! That's not right. Shame!
That man sacrificed for this country under the federal umbrella. He didn't go on behalf of Cape Breton. He went on behalf of Canada to Kosovo Mitrovica and stood the line. And this country, the Harper government, has let him down. And I'm here advocating on his behalf because that story needs to be told. Another thought on the VIP program and the fact that we don't have the same programs as was given to the World War II veterans. One of these days, sooner than later, we will have our own Brian Dick come back from Afghanistan. And there will be nothing in place for that individual who will have to push a rock up a hill like Brian Dick had to do, which was a crime. And so I'm asking on behalf of our elderly veterans and our disabled veterans, now and soon to come, that Mr. Harper, you get off your wallet and you provide the RCMP the funds to correct this. You want to fix the RCMP? Well, give them the money. Give Commissioner Elliott the money to fix it. And don't let this pitfall happen, because it's going to happen. That is a guarantee. As long as we are sending volunteers to Afghanistan and other places in the world. Now, there's another case similar to Mel Birmingham. I'm not privy to it, but it's in Quebec. And what's going on? We have another one, and no one is doing anything. So is the government going to talk to the province, or the province going to talk to the government? No, it's the government's responsibility, because those police service officers volunteered to go for Canada under the Canadian federal umbrella. It is the federal responsibility to take care of those other officers that come back disabled, as well as the RCMP officers. I have another sad story, unfortunately. I was contacted by a serving member of the RCMP, Sergeant Brian Kelly. Some of you may have remembered him. He was our first serious casualty in Kabul, Afghanistan, from a suicide bomber. He lost a third of one of his legs. And today, he is injured. He's an injured veteran, and he bled. He was the first Canadian RCMP officer to literally bleed on Afghan soil. Not to say that others are not bleeding in other ways. Well, in August 15th is when his tragic event took place, and he has not yet received his service medal for Afghanistan. What is going on in the RCMP? They have lost their sense of dishonor? This man has bled for this country, and he has not received a service medal for being in Afghanistan. And he's filed grievances as to why, but no one seems to want to answer him.
Shame.
And what does that say to us veterans and serving members in the armed forces and all the police services? It's a tragedy. It's an insult to us all. And one closing comment. I sent a letter to Prime Minister Harper over a year ago. And I was referred to Veterans Affairs, who never answered me. I resent it again. This time they sent me to the Treasury Board. Why in hell did they send me to the Treasury Board? I have no idea. It was an insult, as far as I was concerned. And then they sent my letter to the Minister of Public Safety. Still, never got a reply from the Prime Minister. Matter of fact, NDP MP Stouffer personally handed my letter to one of his staff. Still have heard nothing. And what it was I wanted to know why he did not acknowledge the sacrifice that police officers, RCMP, and police services officers are making overseas. And why is that not on his website? Well, it still hasn't changed because it's not on there. I can tell you I checked just the other day. Anyway, I thank you again for listening to me. And again, we owe a lot to Brian Dick for inspiring us all to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. I think this highlights pretty clearly, that it's not only military veterans that are having issues here, that there are other people who serve this country in good faith that demand and deserve quality care. I would now invite Dave Desjardins to come speak about CF issues.
Today marks a monumental day in Canadian history. Canadian Forces veterans, families, and members of the Canadian public gather across our nation to lend their voices to address issues of great concern not only to today's veterans, but to future generations. The Canadian public has shown over and over in countless ways the tremendous support that they have for the men and women who willingly put themselves in harm's way to make Canada the great country that it is. Is it too unrealistic to ask the same for our government and its officials? We hear constantly in the media, public addresses, and in the House of Commons how the government supports the troops 100%. However, when it comes to issues surrounding veterans and their families, the topic is treated as an annoyance, often being diverted and downplayed. Colonel Stogren, appointed by the federal government to act as the voice of the Canadian veteran, as Veterans Ombudsman, has listened to us and has raised some very serious concerns only to be shoved aside by the very people that appointed him because he brought to light issues they didn't want to hear. Veterans Affairs Canada, the institution which was formed to assist our veterans and their families, has bogged down in a bureaucratic quagmire with unrealistic determination times for claims and no personal accountability. Claims being refused, modified, or lost completely, forcing veterans to redo the entire process right from the start. As a member of the Canadian Forces or the RCMP, you are personally responsible for your actions or inactions. The loss of confidential or protected documents is a serious breach with dire consequences. Not so, however, seemingly with VAC. All the while, more time passes, and the veteran as well as their family is left to wonder, worry about their future, and deal with the apathetic voice on the other end of the phone. In the past few weeks, there have been announcements of large sums of money being set aside for Canadian veterans, attached to impressive words such as catastrophic injury. To some who are not affected, these sums may seem fairly significant. To those affected, however, after doing the math and trying to balance the budget, they are little more than an attempt to appease the outcries of the voters based on the number of injured soldiers as a result of our latest conflict, and seemingly only addresses physical injuries. Canadian veterans have sustained injury and illness of a catastrophic nature in areas other than Afghanistan alone. Catastrophic should not only be based on the physical. Operational stress injuries can be just as debilitating as a physical injury and are often harder to treat and with a greater effect on the quality of life, not only for the member, but for their whole family and social circle as well. Let me be clear. What we're doing here today is not necessarily about money, as some may view it. This is about dignity, pride, honor, respect, and security for our families' future and that of generations to come. Under the new Veterans Charter, the maximum payout is more or less equivalent to one extra large coffee a day for a younger service member who is injured, assuming that they live to the age of 85. A far cry from the $131,000 a year pensions some members of Parliament are entitled to. I've always tried to impart on my children that there comes a time in everyone's life where you have to stand up for what you feel is fundamentally right and just, despite what others may think. This is one of those times. We need the concerns raised here today addressed in a timely fashion. We need Colonel Stogren's blueprint seriously considered and implemented. We need our ombudsman to have the right to speak on our behalf and to have the government listen, understand, and back them up without fear of repercussion. We need our civilian law enforcement brothers and sisters who have become ill or injured in the performance of peacekeeping duties for their country to be adequately represented and compensated. We need our elected federal government